The latest version of the 20-point Ukraine peace plan stipulates. The signatories affirm that Ukraine is a sovereign state. The document constitutes a full and unquestionable non-aggression agreement between Russia and Ukraine. A monitoring mechanism will be set up to oversee the conflict line using satellite-based unmanned surveillance, ensuring early detection of violations. Ukraine will receive security guarantees. The size of Ukraine's armed forces will remain at 800,000 personnel during peacetime. The US, NATO, and European signatory states will provide Ukraine with Article 5-like guarantees. Following points apply. If Russia invades Ukraine, a coordinated military response will be launched, and all global sanctions against Russia will be reinstated. If Ukraine invades Russia or opens fire at a Russian territory without provocation, the security guarantees will be considered void. If Russia opens fire on Ukraine, the security guarantees will come into effect. Previously signed bilateral security agreements between Ukraine and around 30 countries will remain in place. Russia will formalize its non-aggression stance towards Europe and Ukraine in all necessary laws and documents, ratifying them by Russia's State Duma. Ukraine will become an EU member at a clearly designated time and will receive a short-term preferential access to the European markets. Ukraine will receive a global development package detailed in a separate agreement covering various economic areas. A development fund will be created for investing in fast-growing industries including technology, data centers, and artificial intelligence. The US and US companies will work with Ukraine to jointly invest in the restoration, modernization, and operation of Ukraine's gas infrastructure, including pipelines and storage facilities. Joint efforts will be made to rebuild war-torn areas, focusing on restoring and modernizing cities and residential neighborhoods. Infrastructure development will be prioritized. Extraction of minerals and natural resources will be expanded. The World Bank will provide a special funding package to support the acceleration of these efforts. A high-level working group will be established, including the appointment of a leading global financial expert as the Prosperity Administrator, to oversee the implementation of the Strategic Recovery Plan and future prosperity. Several funds will be created to address the restoration of the Ukrainian economy, the reconstruction of damaged areas and regions, and humanitarian issues. The goal is to raise $800 billion, which is the estimated cost of the damage caused by the Russian war. Ukraine will accelerate the process of negotiating a free trade agreement with the US. Ukraine reaffirms its commitment to remaining a non-nuclear state in accordance with the Treaty of the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. Control over the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and the restoration of the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant. Washington proposes that the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant be jointly operated by Ukraine, Russia, and the US, with each country controlling 33% and the US serving as the primary overseer of the station. Ukraine and Russia will introduce school courses that promote understanding and tolerance of different cultures, fight racism and prejudice. Ukraine will approve EU rules on religious tolerance and minority language protection. In the Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson regions, the line of military positions on the date of signing will be recognized as the de facto front line. To determine the troop movements needed to end the war and establish potential free economic zones, Russia will withdraw its troops from these areas. Russia must withdraw its troops from the occupied parts of Dnipropetrovsk, Mykolaiv, Sumy, and Kharkiv regions for the agreement to take effect. International forces will be placed along the front line to monitor the agreement's implementation. The parties agreed to adhere to the rules and obligations set forth in the 1949 Geneva Conventions and their additional protocols, including those pertaining to universal human rights. Russia and Ukraine commit to refraining from using force to alter territorial arrangements and will resolve any disputes through diplomatic means. Russia will not obstruct Ukraine's use of the Dnipro River and the Black Sea for commercial purposes. A separate maritime agreement will guarantee freedom of navigation and transportation. The Russian-occupied Kinburn Spit will be demilitarized. A humanitarian committee will be established to ensure the following: all-for-all prisoner exchange. All detained civilians, including children and political prisoners, will be released. Actions will be taken to address the problems and alleviate the suffering of victims of the conflict. Ukraine must hold presidential elections as soon as possible after the deal is signed. The deal will be legally binding. Its implementation will be monitored by the Peace Council chaired by US President Donald Trump. Ukraine, Europe, NATO, Russia, and the US will be part of this process. Violations will result in sanctions. The ceasefire will take effect immediately once all parties agree to the deal.